Hello everybody and welcome to episode 6 of the Digital Marketing Punkcast. You may remember that last time I had Ben Furfie on the show talking about WordPress, our conversation went on for a considerable amount of time, so I thought rather than let you listen to a 2-hour epic of me and Ben talking, I thought I'd split it down into 2 episodes and let you listen to part 2 this time instead. Apologies for the delay of this podcast coming out. Unfortunately, I have been busy, but this is a long one as well. It's around about 40 minutes long, so I hope you enjoy part 2 of my conversation with Ben Furfie, all about WordPress websites.
Yeah, and there is limited functionality in WordPress to be able to hook in a certain amount, but obviously we've already discussed of the downsides of that in terms of then we're talking about speed and we're talking about all these different add-ons and things and plugins that you can get. There is a certain amount of functionality that you can get out of WordPress.
I'm not sure I'd agree. I mean, technically you could do pretty much anything in WordPress. Anything that you can do in another modern content management system. Part of the problem, and I'll go into more detail later, but is that WordPress is powered by very, very old code.
Yeah.
There is code from 15 years ago that still defines the core of WordPress. And we've learned a lot in 15 years.
Yes.
And part of that is that causes problems. It's even down to the way you write the code. I know it sounds silly, but functions, so the pieces of code that encapsulate a function of WordPress, the names of those functions are written with underscores. In the PHP community, which is what WordPress is written in, it's written in PHP, have long moved on from using that writing standard to, so I think that's called snake case. Don't quote me on that. I think it's called snake case. They now use something called camel case, which is basically, instead of having the underscore function underscore name, they have it, the function name, and the second and third words and so on are all capitalized. Anyway, it's all semantics.
Essentially what you're saying is the code is antiquated. It's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's very, very antiquated, and because of that, you typically find that the more professional developers are having to bounce between different standards and different ways of writing things, and that has a cognitive deficit, I think is the term, and that impacts on your ability to get more work done. So the point being that you can do it with WordPress, but to quote, the ever intelligent Dr. Ian, is it McKellen?
Yes.
In Jurassic Park? Yeah. Your scientists were so focused on whether or not they could or not. They never stopped to ask whether they should. And quite often that's typically what, sort of putting functionality into WordPress is typically that, because the other part of the problem is that there's a lot of security holes within WordPress. A lot of those new ways of doing things have inbuilt security. And you can add that security onto WordPress and how WordPress hooks into things, but it's additional work that you shouldn't need to do.
Exactly. So you're saying that it's built on antiquated code. I'm going to circle back around to this point in a second. It's built on antiquated code. It does have security vulnerabilities, and this is a question I was going to come on to about developers and their relationship with WordPress, and it seems to be the popular choice. That doesn't mean the developer has chosen to pick WordPress. And I know this from experience in agencies myself, that 9 times out of 10, it's not the developer's choice to work on WordPress. It's usually someone higher up than that. And that goes with any chosen CMS platform.
Yeah. So,
and I think, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think this actually comes down to a matter of semantics at times, because quite often what I've found is that you'll have somebody come to you and say, oh, I really want a WordPress website. I'm saying WordPress with lowercase p. The reason why about is I'll come back to this in a second. But anyway, just to give you a quick insight, there's a whole thing about in WordPress that it will uppercase the P for you. The function's called what's it called? Uppercase P Dagnamit. Because it's part of their brand. But anyway, the point of what I was talking about is that WordPress, to some extent, because of its dominance in the market and because of its persuasiveness within the sort of web sector and people's interactions, lay people's interactions with the web, it's sort of become a genericized trademark in the same way that you hoover your floor, or Americans spackle their walls when they've got holes. It'd be you polyfill your walls over here. It's become a genericized term. So quite often when people are saying, I want a WordPress website, they're not actually saying, I want a WordPress website. They're saying, I want a way to edit my website. And I think that's miscommunicated at times down the line from either the salesperson or, from other people, or because people just never ask. They just assume, they want a WordPress website. All right, we'll give you a WordPress website.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of the problem.
Yeah, it does happen. And you're absolutely right. It never boils down to, I want my website to do X, Y, and Z. It's a case of, well, they've asked for this, let's give them this. And, you just said, and this might be in your personal opinion, but I know that it's shared amongst other developers as well. The code is antiquated. They do updates, but they're bolt-on updates or security updates and whatever. Security vulnerabilities are massive, not just because there's lots of holes in WordPress, but because it does take up 29% of whatever the space of the web. There's a lot of opportunity there for those that wish to take those opportunities. So is this, in your personal opinion, is there not an opportunity coming round here? Is there not a change in the tide somewhere where suddenly people will turn around one day and say, why are we using WordPress? Why are we using this code which is antiquated and which has security vulnerabilities? Why aren't we using this system, X, Y, or Z system, to be able to build our websites on? Because the world of the internet is changing. We talk about, and I know this from Google I/O this year. We talk more about progressive web apps, and Starbucks is now basically just a web app, and you can order things from straight from the site, and it's not a website per se anymore in the traditional sense of pages and content and text or anything like that. Is there not going to come a day where people are going to turn around, if the platform ever reveals itself, and say, why are we using WordPress? Why do we not use this?
So to follow back to one of the first points you made, you said that WordPress isn't secure. I've been told off about this many, many times by people who I respect very much. WordPress core, the bit of WordPress that you download from WordPress.org, is incredibly secure. It's really, and the jobs that the teams do are phenomenal. Now, they're overstretched, and they sometimes don't have the resources that they need to. And this came to light last week when a PHP security researcher was getting really, really, really annoyed with WordPress. And when I say WordPress in this instance, I'm talking about the community that oversees its development. Sorry, pardon me. They were getting really annoyed with them because they told them about a security issue that would allow anybody who had a user account, so a login for a WordPress website, above what's known as an author, which is a really, really low, it's not the lowest, but it's a low level account, who should only be able to write a blog post. They might not even be able to publish it. They might just be able to save it as a draft, while someone with a higher level of clearance, in fact, it's like a bit like security clearance levels. That person and up can delete key files by making some very, very convoluted changes to the browser to do it. So it's not going to be the type of thing that's going to happen accidentally, Mary accounts is not going to delete the config file by accident. It's just not going to happen. But it could be used by people with less altruistic or, sort of less technical knowledge to do things that you really don't want them to do. Like delete, there's a file called wp-config that, as the name suggests, contains all of the WordPress config information. So your database name, your database password, your database, all these different bits and pieces. You can delete it. Gone. If you haven't saved that, you're screwed. You are screwed because you can't get that back. Once something gets deleted off a server, typically that's it. It's gone. And that was one of the reasons why. And so the point that I'm making there is that although they are very good, they're also very stretched. The actual weakness with WordPress actually comes from its reliance on plugins. Now, a lot of people say that the plugin market is its strength. I would not say that that is the case because modern content management systems like Craft, Statamic, Perch, Grav, October, I'm trying to think of some other ones. They all have plugin or add-on. They all have different names, but they all have the capability to add in additional functions that you haven't had to write yourself. And they're self-contained. You can write them yourself. You can, if you've got the ability to, but you can also just plug them in, which is why they're called plugins. And that's really where the weakness happens because WordPress is so antiquated. A lot of these newer content management systems have really thought about security issues from the ground up. And so they have these protections in place to ensure that you're not writing functions that access the database in a potentially dangerous way that could give people who shouldn't have access to things. Now, a lot of these lessons have been actually learnt by WordPress. And WordPress's security teams are ultimately responsible for a hell of a lot of best practice knowledge. But the problem is they can't go back and just change how these work because it would break things. And WordPress has this this honorable thing that, like American Special Forces, they don't leave anybody behind. So the idea is that, it doesn't matter whether, you're running WordPress 2.9, which you really shouldn't be. You shouldn't be running anything before 4, even then it should be 4.9.6, the latest version. Now, the idea is that they should be able to still use it, should still run, it should all, and that's a really admirable thing. But in practice, it means that you end up with a situation where you've got really antiquated technology being ran and having to be supported. The minimum version of the software that has to be on a server that allows WordPress to run. So it's effectively Windows for WordPress to run on is 5.2.4, which don't quote me, but I think that software has a concept called end of support and end of life. End of support is when basically the company or the organization behind it go, whoop, that's it, no more support. If there's a big security bug that comes out, we'll fix it, but no more new features for it. End of life is, if you're stupid enough to be still using this, it's on you. Now, PHP, even if there's a big security app, so PHP 5.4 is end of life, I think. I'm not going to search for it right now because you'll hear me tapping on the keyboard, was about 4 or 5 years ago. Which, bearing in mind that this is software and these are secure things that people are running on, is incredible. Now, to be fair, a lot of hosting companies have upgraded to the latest version, which is PHP 7, because it's a lot faster and it uses a lot less resources than what PHP 5X used. So really, the only reason why they did it is because there was a financial benefit for them to do it. But you can still use these older versions if you really wanted to, and it's a security risk. That's a big part of the problem. But like I said, the real risk is in plugins, and plugins that have not been coded properly, or themes that have not been coded properly, things that are not escaped, things that are not, and it's very easy to do. I make these mistakes all the time. When I push code up to the server, it goes through a really complicated process. It has to be checked by other developers. It then has to go through a change assessment board, which is basically a panel of developers and business stakeholders who go, what is this change? What impact is it going to have? Why are we doing it? Okay, do we accept it? Yes, we accept it. It then goes through another round of testing, having already been tested once to make sure it's not breaking anything. And things still get through. Because that's the nature of code, it's complicated. As I once joked with somebody, I said, it's like people go, oh, you're a bit like plumbers, aren't you? Well, no. We're like plumbers who have to create the pipe that they're using to, sort of fix a leak by manipulating the atoms of the plastic to get it to be exactly how, it's a lot more complicated than it seems. Things slip through. There was a security bug that got fixed very recently in our website where if you went to a particular page and you linked to that page, because you should not have been accessing that page, and it wasn't something that was done by me, it was my predecessor that did it, not to pass blame or anything, but I'll quite happily put my hands up and say that I've screwed up countless times. Basically, if you went to that website and then you linked back, it actually sent you back to the website that you'd been linked to from, which is a really dangerous thing, because if somebody had realized that and had ended up, basically building something that had a very, very similar look, they could have, basically made it look like our login, captured the details, and then sent them to the actual website. Not a very, very good thing. But anyway, I mean, that's like an example of something that can happen. Now, if you think about this, a lot of these plugins are being built and a lot of themes, there's no restriction on who can do it. And that's a big part of it, is that they really like this thing of anybody can contribute. But the whole anybody can contribute leads to a situation where you've got people who are writing code that maybe isn't quite up to scratch. And because everyone's volunteers in the WordPress community, apart from, it gets really complicated. Some of the big customers and users of WordPress contribute back, so they're paid to sort of spend time developing stuff. But a large amount of people are volunteers, and a lot of the people who are checking code are volunteers, and so it doesn't necessarily actually pass a lot of security things, and that's where a lot of the weakness is. Now, just to touch on the last 2 points that I made from that original question, which is, we're going to see a move away from WordPress. There's a big change coming out called Gutenberg. And this is stirring up a lot of very pertinent questions and a lot of hatred. Is hatred the right word? Anger. Anger is probably the more appropriate word within the WordPress community of WordPress developers who are actually real developers who know what they're doing. And I don't say that in an insulting way to people. There are certain people who I wish they would call themselves implementers rather than developers, because that's what they do. It's a valuable skill. They're effectively junior developers, but without a senior to lead them. There are people within the community who are extremely well respected who are now questioning about this change to the editor. That are they doing it the right way? This whole adherence to backwards compatibility must be maintained at all costs has led them to build this new functionality in a really convoluted, stupid way. And they're now saying, oh, we should really be looking at saying, right, that's it. WordPress 4.9.6 is the last version of WordPress 1, and we're now going on to WordPress 2, and all this kind of thing. So there is a lot of fracturing within the community, and I did write quite a long Twitter storm, I think back at the beginning of the year, basically questioning whether this would be the end of WordPress. Not in a sense that people would stop using it, but that it would stop being the darling of a certain part of the web development world. And then final point about what you brought up was about PWA, so progressive web apps. This is something that really gets on my nerves. Progressive web apps are for applications. If people use them on brochure websites, they need taking outside and giving a good slap, because we're interviewing at the moment for a role. Some of the CVs that we've had through have been people saying, "Oh yeah, I can build websites in React." I was like, "Well, I don't care, because you're not going to use React here. React is an application framework that was built by Facebook to handle problems that Facebook had with scaling its application. It's designed for companies like Netflix and Amazon and, maybe some smaller companies and stuff, but they're not designed for, Joe the plumber and his website. Or even for us, our applications that we sell access to, yeah, great. React's perfect for them, but for a marketing website, no. So, I mean, a big part of the problem is that if you're using WordPress to power an application, you need being taken outside and given a slap. Use Laravel, or use Symfony or CodeIgniter, or if you're sadistic, use PHP Falcon. All these application frameworks that are designed from the ground up to power applications. That's why they're called application frameworks. But yeah, basically the point being that, there's a whole world of things that go on outside, sort of like that type of thing. And so, the point being that from a security perspective, the issue is to do with how those plugins and those themes hook into core, and the weakness has been where they join. Gutenberg is driving all kinds of arguments in the space about, the direction of WordPress, and that could cause a fracturing. And then you got PWAs, which should not be discussed within the context of a marketing website.
So is there an alternative? I'm not saying WordPress is dying. I think we've got WordPress for some time yet. Okay. But is there an alternative? Is there something which we can consider? And I'm talking not for PWAs, not for applications of any kind. I'm talking for a website building CMS platform, for anyone from Joe the plumber who just wants to get his number out there to, everyone up to application level, which is, just someone that requires a certain amount of functionality to be able to have contact forms, to plug in stuff like MailChimp, to be able to put their Facebook feed on, and is there a platform which will allow that amount of functionality without limiting them, and also be secure and fast and quick and all those things that Google love? Is there an alternative which is still accessible to almost everybody in terms of just being able to edit their content on their website?
Yeah, but first point, if you're concerned about speed and optimization, never put a Facebook feed on, never put a Twitter feed on your website. Believe me, when I do performance optimization audits, they are the first things to go, because they are such a...
Do you know what? That's so weird. It's very weird that you mentioned that, because that's exactly the conversation. And I don't know why I said it myself. It's exactly the conversation that I had with a developer that I worked with last week. And that was, he turned around to me and said, there's this Twitter feed on this website. It's slowing everything down. And I said, well, remove it. And he couldn't compute that I'd asked for a Twitter feed to be removed from the site. I said, let's just throw a link on to the Twitter feed. Why does the Twitter feed need to be there? That's for incoming people getting to the site, not for being on the site and going. I don't want people to go off and go and see the Twitter feed. Yeah.
It's a thought process from like 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, it's a great idea. And then they're going, no, actually, it's probably not that good an idea when you think about it. But so,
That being said, sorry, I do have an Instagram feed on my website, but that is that's just so people can know who I am and see my face. That might not be the best practice in the world, but I took a decisive decision to say, sorry, I'm having an Instagram feed on my website.
It makes sense in some situations. Yeah, if you're a celebrity, then yeah, absolutely put an Instagram feed, because it's a feedback loop. Ultimately, You're not going to probably interact with a celebrity via their website. You're not going to go to arianagrande.com, are you? You're probably going to follow her on Instagram.
No.
Anyway, complete aside. And no, I don't listen to Ariana Grande. I was reading something before that just happened to mention her, and she was the first celebrity that came to mind. Anyway, so you were saying...
Don't make your excuses. So you were basically... You want to listen to Ariana Grande, you be proud.
There's nothing wrong with her, at the end of the day, but it's just not what I choose to listen to. But yeah, so you were saying about alternatives. So in terms of alternatives to like Joe the Plumber or Soul Trader or whatever, your job is not web development.
No.
You hear people wince at I think you were talking to Kaz about, sort of website prices and stuff, and people wincing at the idea of having to pay £10,000. That's the reality of, the absolute minimum I would charge for a CMS based website is 2,500. I don't do it anymore, but that's the minimum that I would charge, because there's so many different factors that have to be taken into account there.
Absolutely.
But, so I would say go on a website builder, use those, just don't worry too much. You're not competing with Mark from Middlesbrough if you're, sort of Pete in Peterborough. I don't know why that one came to, but different parts of the country, you're not competing. At the end of the day, people are going to be, sort of, speed isn't everything for that type of market. You're not massive multi-million pound companies who are like competing with, other massive multi-million pound companies who've all got their own SEO and digital marketing departments and, are all trying to eke out like milliseconds off the thing. Use a page builder, do it, get it up. Like Kaz said, spend a couple of hours doing it and just forget about it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not crucial to your business. Especially for a plumber, there's that much business out there at the moment. All you're really concerned about is, are they a cowboy or not?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So for them, just use a page builder. If you are a sort of looking at a more complicated website, there's a number of content management systems out there. But ultimately, if I'm being absolutely honest, you don't need to worry about it. Just find a digital marketing agency or a developer who you trust can take your business objectives. I want to do this. This is the outcome that I want. Okay? Find someone you trust. Find someone who understands what you're looking to do. And let them pick whatever they feel comfortable working with. Because
absolutely,
you don't turn around to your business, your builder and say, oh, that's a brand B hammer. Why are you not using brand A? Brand A's got 50% of the marketplace, and the builder turns around and goes, yeah, that's a pile of shit. You hit, thinking pounds swore there. You have to bleep that out.
It's all right. Do you know what? I already forward thought this. This whole podcast series has been set as an expletive content.
Fair enough. If I'd known that, anybody who actually knows me knows I swear. I'm a trooper. So to get to nearly hour 20 in and not having swore, that's
it's very impressive. Yeah.
That's very impressive. But yeah, the point being that, it's, where was I going before I swore and threw myself off? About hammers. So anyway, I'll come back. There's another point about hammers in a second. So anyway, basically as I was saying, you don't tell the builder what tools they should use or whatever. You just want them to put something up. And now, at the end of the day, a content management system is a tool. Chances are, if you cannot build the website yourself in Squarespace or whatever, you need to hire a professional.
Yeah.
Don't waste your time learning how to build websites. As somebody who, I've been doing this for 17 years now, what I learned all those years ago is completely redundant now.
Yes.
I mean, don't get me wrong, one of the first websites I built is still up and still runs. It's all built in technology that, if you built that now, people would laugh you out the door and say, what are you doing? But it works. It works.
It's functional.
It's functional. It works. I'm amazed it looks as good as it does now. It doesn't look good, but for something that's as old as it is, it still looks pretty good. But yeah, the point being that it's not about the tools that are used. It's about people being able to achieve what you need. If you want to get more leads, then ultimately a website is actually quite a small part of that. You need to understand how your sales funnel works. You need to understand at what point are people actually touching your website, and what part of there's a business idea that people have. I think it's HubSpot really sort of pushes this, that you have to, I know actually it's not HubSpot, it's Infusionsoft, that you have to touch a customer 5 times, not literally physically. I'm pretty sure by the time you said you touch the customer the second time, they're going to go, you're a bloody weirdo, I'm not working with you. But you have to have 5 contact points with a customer, and that can be your introduction, that can be sort of following up, etc., etc. And, the point is that nobody makes a sale straight away. Your website can be a touch point, and it can be multiple touch points. But if you don't understand that, you're not going to have an effective website. And at the end of the day, that type of stuff is far more important than, whether you've built the website with WordPress or Craft or, whatever. Ultimately, those decisions are sometimes more of an OpEx or a CapEx question than really a sort of business functional question. They're more financial questions, just purely from the simple perspective of WordPress costs a lot to actually keep safe. WordPress costs a lot to update. I know that WordPress has this one-click update thing, but believe me, that's like Russian roulette. I mean, literally, is like Russian roulette. And if you press update and it updates your database and you haven't got a backup, you're screwed. Again, that's why, if I ever do a backup, people always say, well, you charge £50 a month to just update a WordPress website. You go, because I have to keep a copy of all the code. I have to download that and spin that up on a local server that exists on my computer. I then have to pull down a copy of the database, install that copy of the database, get that all running, then run the update, and hey, everything's fine. Okay, that's fine. Then I can then push that change up to the new website, or I can then click on update if I want to do it that way.
Which is not a one-click process.
No, it's not a one-click process. And I mean, that's where a lot of that cost comes from. There's additional costs to do with what are known as WAF, WAF, Website Application Firewalls, that basically protect you against things like malicious hackers. So, somebody's sending a lot of automated scripts, so computer programs at your website to try and find vulnerabilities. It'll block the IP. If somebody tries to log in and they do not have the correct username and they log in 4 or 5 times or try to, and they fail, it'll block the IP. They have protection against what are known as DDoS attacks. So, like when a website gets taken down because somebody's sending a lot of traffic at it, that's a classic thing that those protect against.
I see.
Those type of things, again, cost money. You're looking at a minimum £10 a month once you take into account fluctuating interest rates, because everything in this industry is paid with forward dollars, which is the bane of my existence. Because it makes it hard to plan. So you just round it up. But basically all these things, it quickly becomes very expensive. Deployment tools. If you're on a cheap server and I can't SSH in, which just basically means log into the server on the command line. So, those type of hacker programs you see where people are typing commands in.
Just to reference back to Jurassic Park there, that guy, Samuel L. Jackson, there would have probably accessed all that computer sort of security stuff through SSH.
Really interesting thing. There's a Reddit subreddit. Should have said there's a subreddit rather than a Reddit. Called It's a Unix System.
Right.
And it's basically, if you've never heard of Reddit, it describes itself as the front page of the internet. If you've been on Facebook and you've seen a funny meme or you've seen a funny picture, chances are it came from Reddit. Somebody on Reddit probably made it. And it basically if you run a business, do not go on Reddit. I'll say that right now. Do not go on Reddit because you will waste so much time. It is an incredible time sink. But this subreddit, which is like basically a collection of sort of a community within the bigger community, it's called It's a Unix System. And it's set up because it basically takes the mick out of US dramas and stuff like CSI Miami, where it says, can you zoom in? Can you up the resolution of that? Yeah, because it's all crap. It doesn't work like that.
But it helps. It helps the narrative actually.
It helps the story.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is that Jurassic Park's demonstration of that computer is actually accurate. That's how it works. That is actually an incredibly accurate portrayal of how those systems work. And anyway, that's really going off course.
That's the side part of the story. That was my bad.
No, it's fine, don't worry. But you've learned something new. Jurassic Park might have completely got what dinosaurs look like wrong, but they got a computer system right.
Because they weren't full of feathers.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so basically the point being that I live in that particular sort of writing commands out directly into the computer. And if I can't log in, then I have to pay out for an application that can push stuff up for me, because I don't just use regular FTP, which is a way of connecting to a server to send files from your computer to the server. So, there's all these different costs that come along with, sort of like the content management system that you pick, but ultimately that's a figure that I tell people. So that's how much it's going to cost if you have this type of website, it's going to cost you that for me to maintain it.
Yeah.
And so realistically, sort of touch on that point, unless you're doing it yourself, in which case use a page builder.
Yeah.
Sorry, not a page builder. In fact, that's one thing, WordPress page builders, just don't. You will cause yourself nightmares. Just steer clear of them. But if you want to use it, and honestly, they are pretty much doing exactly the same thing that Squarespace, Wix, and that do.
Yeah.
But Wix and that do it a damn sight better. And you can't break those sites as easily. So just stick with those. Yes, they cost money, but you know what? They're worth it. Use let the developer or let the agency pick the tool that will suit what you need out of your website best.
Yes.
That's the best piece of advice I can give.
Excellent. Fantastic. I suppose I'm gonna sort of wrap this up. We've covered a lot. We've covered a lot of ground.
Yes.
I think we're both in agreement that at the end of the day, if you're looking for that sort of, whether it's brochure or business cards kind of website, then the web-based platform is definitely the way to go. If you're looking for anything more in terms of functionality from that, then, and it's a thing that I'm kind of getting a growing sense and trend of, if you're looking for anything more than that, then this isn't a do-it-yourself sort of deal. You do have to get an expert in, you do have to get a developer, and it is important, and people do keep saying this, it has to be someone that you trust in order for them to actually achieve something, because if they're just doing it as a part and parcel of, you're not going to get what you want from that. It's going to be a bit of a mess. So, someone that understands and someone you trust is absolutely key there.
Yeah, I mean, with trust, what I'll add is try to stay clear of these places like Fiverr and Upwork and, the 1,000,001 Indian outsourcers who will contact you the second you register a domain. Don't go near them. Now, that's not to say don't go near Indian developers. There are some incredibly talented Indian developers out there who really should be paid the same as what Western developers are. But these places that contact you, they're like contact call centers. They're just there to churn and get as much money out of you. And the amount of times I've had to completely rebuild a website because it was built by an outsourcer of any, it doesn't really matter what nationality, just they were built by an outsourcer. And they've had to completely rebuild the whole thing. And they lose it because they're there to basically rip you off. They're effectively cowboys. And there are cowboys in this country, there are cowboys in America. What the point I was going to make was, when you start thinking about, okay, a Weebly, a Squarespace, a Wix website is not going to cut it. I need to find someone. Speak to people speak to other business owners, find out who they use, find out who they recommend. On top of that, if you don't have that many contacts, go join a chamber of commerce. Many of them have free, or not free, sometimes they do it for free if you're new or you're thinking about joining business networking sessions. Go to one. Speak to other business owners there. Ask them who they use. You don't even have to join, but just get a recommendation for somebody from a real person who has used that service, because, you know, in the past, I'll put my hands up and say, I've oversold what I could do. And this was like many years ago. And I've had to give refunds to companies. I've, you know, had companies basically say they'd never work with me again. It happens. You know, you're learning. And at the end of the day, you know, those type of companies, a lot of the time, they were finding me online. These days now, like, if I work with anybody, it's always through recommendation or referral. Because at the end of the day, like, it means I know I can trust them because they're being referred by somebody who I work with, but equally they know that they can trust me. And because of the fact that, you know, you're talking about these things that can range anything from, I've worked on websites that range from, well, we both used to work at the same agency that sold websites quite frequently for £150. I'm shaking my head right now. Because, and to be fair, they managed to turn a profit because, kudos to them, they spent so much time optimizing the process. You know, they could literally have a junior who they were paying a pittance, you know, put these websites together for maybe 50 quid. You know, by the time you'd taken off the stupid commission that the salesperson had earned, they were still making maybe like 1 or 2 quid. So not made a profit, but I mean, they were making a profit. But anyway, I digress. You know, you're typically talking about, like, you know, working on websites from 2,500 up to, I think the most expensive website I've ever worked on, well, ones that I'll admit to have worked on, because there's certain industries that I've worked in that will never appear on my CV because they may, and almost any developer who's been working in the industry as long as I have worked on those websites. Some that certain people visit every day. Not me. I'm not saying, sorry, to be honest, it may sound like I go on them every day. I just mean some people going on every day. But anyway, again, digressing. But, like, you know, sort of from 250, like, say £2,500 through to, you know, sort of £250,000 in terms of, like, budgets and stuff. And that's not a small amount of cash.
No.
I mean, especially if you're talking about somebody who runs their own business.
No.
And they're a sole trader, and the cash that is in the business is their own personal cash. You know, it's far easier to convince a business who's limited and has a separate bank account and has very clear definitions between the money that belongs to the company and the money that belongs to the owner to spend £2,500 on a website. But when it's, you know, somebody's own earnings, it becomes a lot harder. But irrespective of that, you know, that's still a large amount of money for you to just be spending having Googled someone or, you know, having responded to a cold email, you know. So it's all about, like you said, it's about trust. It's about contacting people, finding people who've used people. And if you actually can't find someone and you find an agency who you think would be good, or a freelancer, contact their referrals. Contact the people they say that they've worked with. You would be shocked at how many people I know who put up fake referrals.
Like case study, like fake case studies and all that kind of stuff. It does.
It's like, because people just don't bother to check.
No.
You know, we all know we're supposed to ring 5 or 6 different garage door companies to get a quote, but, you know, you sort of hear one, you go, that's all right, I'll go with that. I can't be bothered.
Absolutely. It is absolutely true, and it does happen. And that's, you know, I say this, I seem to say this every week, but, you know, it's part of the parcel of why this a digital marketing book sort of came to fruition, is that, you know, there is an element of the digital sort of industry being all white and shiny and very, very positive, but there is an underworld to it, and there's a darker side to it, and, you know, there are customers that have been ripped off. You know, it's inspired by our mutual previous employers, and you know, there is a side to it which is very deceitful and lying and things like that. And it's about highlighting that part of that industry.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I mean, you know, sometimes people make genuine overestimations of their abilities. I've done it. Of course. Like I said, I mean, I'll quite happily put my hands on that. Most of the developers who I know have done it at some point or another. Just because a lot of the time when we're doing things, even when we're doing stuff that we've done before, we're doing something completely new. We've never done that before. So it can be quite difficult. You probably know because of your role within the agency. What's the response if you ask a developer how long is it going to take something to do?
They do the classic sort of electrician thing, when I say electrician, but maybe more of a plumber thing. You've got a leaky pipe and you ask them how much to quote for it, and they will do that suck through the teeth. Could be 30 minutes, could be 30 days.
And I mean, I struggle to estimate how much time, things are going to take. I've had things where I've estimated, it's going to take a week and it's taken me 4 hours. I've had things where I've estimated it's going to take me 4 hours and it's taken me 3 weeks. But that's just the nature of the industry. It's so difficult. And even if you break it down and you follow these methodologies of going, right, okay, this is the first step I'm going to take. This is the next step I'm going to take. You can have things spanner in the works, that are not even related to your project. It can just be to do with the tools that you're using on your computer can suddenly go, I'm not going to work. Or, as happened the other week, I'm going to take the internet down for the entire office. And, I swear down, it literally happened at 11 o'clock in the morning. And it wasn't until 5 o'clock in the afternoon that we figured out it was my Mac that was causing it. Still don't know what caused it.
But there are these nuances, and I suppose, and that's sort of part of it. There's this idea that I don't know that digital skills or digital products should just work, and
I wish they did.
Yeah, and that's not the case. And one example of an implementation is very different to another example of an implementation, and the two are not necessarily mirrors of each other. They can be very, very different, but I think on the surface they look like mirrors of each other.
Yeah, I think a really good analogy for this are smartphones. You might not agree with me on this because I know of your thoughts on Apple, but effectively your iPhone is, I don't know, a page builder. It just works. It's Shopify. It's flashy. It's shiny. It's not cheap. It works. As long as you don't want to go out the boundaries of what it can do, it works.
Yes. Yeah.
Android is WordPress.
Yes.
It's for people who want to tweak. It's for people who want to fiddle around with how it works.
Yes.
90% of people actually don't need it. It's actually quite a really good analogy, actually. Most people don't need a WordPress website. They probably get away with a Shutterstock website. Just a picture.
I don't think they exist yet, but it will one day.
Just a picture of a website. Sorry, Shutterstock is a stock photography website that a lot of agencies use. Inside joke there. But most people could use a Squarespace website and get away with it. And the same thing is, as soon as you start screwing around with an Android phone, you're opening yourself up to getting hacked, just like a WordPress website. So it's that type of thing, things just work. Quite often, Android just works. Quite often, more often than not, Android just doesn't work. And that's not because of Google, that's because of Samsung wanting to have 1,000,001 different preloaders that are completely redundant.
Yes,
but anyway, that's a completely different topic of conversation. But the point being that for technology to just work often means that you are accepting limitations in what you can do. Whereas if you want it to do these fancy things that you need it to do that it doesn't out of the box, you're accepting the fact that things are going to go wrong. Things are not going to work. Things are going to cost you more than what even the developer estimated it was going to cost. So it's one of those things. So
estimation in digital worlds is difficult. It's always been very, very difficult.
I think it'll always be difficult, to be honest. So
I don't think there's any two ways about it because there's just too many nuances. It can sort of you can't sort of predict everything when it comes to the technical world. One very last final question that I'm going to ask you. So I think we're both in agreement that if you're going to go down the WordPress route, then an expert is required. You're going to need a certain level of knowledge and education. If you don't have that knowledge and education in the technologies that you're working with, then something will go wrong, and sometimes it can be horrific. So, let's say I'm a small business, I'm a startup, I'm looking, I need this extra level of functionality in my website that Squarespace or Weebly won't provide me. I'm using those as examples. What do I need to have in my head, or what do I need to know to go to an agency? And I'm going to say WordPress. I know we discussed this before, and people just say, I want a WordPress website. What do you need to go to an agency with to be able to say, to be able to go to them, I need this website? What do you need to have sort of pre-planned in your head before you do that?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that you need to have trust.
Yes.
In the agency. There's a joke, and you've probably seen it, of the ever increasing scale of how much it costs per hour. You want a website, that's £100 an hour. You want to watch me do it, that's £150 an hour. You want to tell me how to do it, that's £200 an hour. You've got to have that trust. You've got to have that level of confidence that agency can do what you need it to do from a business perspective. Forget about technology for a minute. You've got to have that confidence that what you are asking them to do is going to have a return on investment.
Yeah, I think I'm going to interrupt here just for a second, because I think there's a key point that you just sort of hit on there. If you don't have that trust in the agency to deliver what you've said, two things, or you don't get something delivered which is your expectations. Two things have gone wrong there. One, you either haven't communicated what you expect to the agency, so they don't know. And sometimes that can happen. A client can have an expectation in their head and they are unable to communicate that over to, and sometimes that can be the agency's fault, and sometimes that can be the client's fault, but that communication has not happened for X, Y, or Z reason. The other one is that the other reason could be that you've had too much input. So an agency, as a matter of course, will send you progress updates, wireframes, sitemaps, whatever it is, during the development process, and your input has been so much that you have diluted what the original idea is, which could have been much, much better. But because the understanding is not there, it can ruin the project.
I think I won't go into it because obviously it's far better in visual format, but I would definitely link to the Oatmeal's How Web Design Goes to Hell comic, because it's such a good example of that.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right.
But I mean, to sort of touch on that, I mean, I obviously try not to drag it out for too long, but it's my wife's birthday in just over a week as when we're recording this. And part of that's involved going online and buying things.
Yes.
And one of those involved going to a website of a very small jeweler.
Are you being specifically vague here because she is nearby, or?
I'm just trying to say, I think she might have gone upstairs. I'm still going to be very vague because I can be quite loud. But yeah, so a certain small artisan craft shop who basically have a website. They sell all their stuff through a website, and it's powered by Shopify. And it was a pleasure to use. It was a real pleasure to use. It had been tweaked just to make it fit with their branding, but I knew exactly which theme they'd used. Didn't bother me. It looked exactly the same as a lot of other ones, but you know what? It's e-commerce. Everything's based on patterns.
Yes, absolutely.
Everything's based on expected patterns. And then there was another national retailer who I can mention. Well, I won't mention names because I don't want to get into legal trouble with this one. But I have pointed out to them on Twitter, if you're really that interested to know who it was, who I was basically saying, it was like about 4 or 5 tweets at their marketing team to basically say, you either need to tell your developers to get this sorted or you need to fire them. Because they are genuinely costing them money. So this was a website that's based on WordPress, and they're one of their e-commerce extensions called WooCommerce, which was actually pretty much just the standard theme. Wrapped around the header and the footer were different, but again, very, very bog standard theme. But because whereas Shopify has all this stuff built in as a platform, all these like things, additional bolt-ons, it were things like, sort of automated address lookup and sort of payment processing and stuff. And I filled it all in, and I got to the point where I went to go and enter my credit card details and couldn't. because you couldn't actually enter the form.
Which, by the way, when we're talking about an e-commerce website, that's like vital. I mean, really, they should work from that point backwards.
Yeah. I mean, this is the point. I mean, like, the whole point I brought this up is because we're talking about having or trying to put too much input in.
Yeah.
And what I always say when people are looking at setting up an e-commerce shop, first thing I say is, how much are you turning over?
Yeah.
If you're not turning over at least £10,000 a month, and I mean that's what you're making, like selling in terms of that, then don't even think about having your own shop. Realistic, unless you're doing something really unique like this person was doing.
Yeah.
It just is not worth the hassle.
No.
Because
you might
think a website's the expensive part. No, with an e-commerce shop, websites are not the expensive part. No. The PPC and the advertising can easily be
the fulfillment, the delivery, all that kind of stuff comes in.
Even that can be quite, pales in comparison to the, between £1,000 and £10,000 for a small shop you can be spending a month on PPC. For £10,000 revenue, I'd be expecting you'd probably be spending about £2,000 on PPC. Yeah. So you'd be having,
to get a return on the profit margin.
If you've got a small shop, go on Amazon, go on eBay, yes, you're going to get a big chunk taken out of it. But guess what? It's a smaller chunk than what it'll cost you to run your own thing. But anyway, that's again, digressing slightly. The point that I was going to make is you cannot change that checkout process on Shopify. And the reason for it is because this is a company who provides solutions to retailers who turn over hundreds of millions of dollars a month. They literally spend hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on experts who analyze over data that has cost tens of thousands of pounds a year to generate, to understand what is the optimum process for checkout.
Absolutely.
And if you suddenly come in and you go, I don't want the form there, I want it there. Tough. I don't care. I'm not costing you money. In the same way that the Hippocratic Oath prevents doctors from doing things that kill their patients, I'm not going to do something that's going to kill your business. No.
Exactly.
But I mean, that's the point. Like, you've got to have that level of trust, and you've got to have that sort of confidence that they can effectively do what they're going to do. Write things down. Write things down, like questions you have, or questions you've been asked, because like I just did then, I completely forgot it was. If you suddenly walk out and forget what you were going to ask, then, have a clear idea of what it is that you want to achieve and understand what you need to be able to deliver to them for them to be able to do their job. As as anybody who listens to this who works in an agency knows, as Josh knows all too well, because we both used to work with Josh as well. And, you were forever hearing, sort of frustration come out of various people who we used to work with. Content and information is the one thing that blocks a website from being progressed all the time. Content, images, information about what you want.
The basic simple building blocks, which is a kind of expectation, is usually the things that get sort of left and forgotten about.
Ban yourself from saying, I don't know, you figure it out.
I'll figure it out,
I'll know what it is when I see it.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Expect to be taken out the back. If I hear those magic words, that's it. I'm just like, no, sorry, we're going to stop this now until we actually work out exactly what it is that you want, because
I'm out of it.
That's like quicksand for a project.
Yes.
As soon as it gets into that region, that's it. It's going to die a very, very slow death. And I've known agencies to go out of business because they've had one or two projects that have been like that have just sucked up all the revenue. They've done it on a project-based pricing. So basically there's a couple of different ways of, again, let's not get into this too much, but you can pay by the hour or you can pay a flat fee. And quite often, the idea is that a hourly rate places the risk on the client, and fixed rate places the risk on the agency. I've seen places where agencies got out of business because they took a gamble on something.
Yes.
The client dragged their feet, didn't pay, and then agencies
exactly. The more time that project spends on the drafting table, as it were, the more money it takes for the agency to actually build it.
Give you an idea, it might sound silly, but up north, this is up north where wages are supposed to be cheaper.
Yeah.
A junior front end developer can cost you between £22,000 to £25,000 a year as an agency.
Yeah.
For more senior people, it costs a lot more. Anything up to, even like in London, a middleweight developer who's typically going to be the one who's working on your project most of the time can cost anywhere between £45,000 to £60,000 a year. If they're working on your site for a month and they're being paid £60,000 a year, that's £5,000. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's £5,000 for their salary alone. That's not even all the other bits and pieces that have to be paid for.
Project management and all that kind of stuff.
So you can see why this gets so expensive. Yeah. But the point being that if you go into a project and you don't know what it is that you need or you want, it's going to fail. I think is it Sun Tzu who said, "It's not plan." No, it was an American. I don't know, somebody famous at some point in history who is far more intelligent than I am, because I can't remember who it was, once said something along the lines of, I'm going to paraphrase, fail to plan to fail.
Yeah.
Something along those lines anyway. I'm pretty sure I heard it on a Civilization game at some point anyway. It's usually where those historical tidbits come from.
Greatest game on earth, by the way. Just point that.
It is, yeah. Again, don't play it because it's another time sink.
Yeah.
There's a whole
don't expect your business to do well,
It's a bit like board games where it's turn-based.
Yeah.
And there's that method, there's that thing of, one more turn.
Just one.
Wait a second. That was 8 o'clock. It's now 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's now 4 a.m.
Yeah. That again, that's, sort of, it's, the point is very much that if you don't have a clear idea of what it is that you want, agencies aren't psychic.
Yeah.
Because if they were, they'd be charging a hell of a lot more than what they do. Because they'd know the balance that you've got in your account for one. That'd be like the most useful thing. I know how much you're willing to pay. They're not psychic. They can't read your brain. And as much as they have a wealth of knowledge in terms of, what similar projects required, they don't know what you require. Even if they've worked with your competitor in the past, they do not necessarily know how you do business and how your processes differ. And even then, technically, they can't rely on saying, oh yeah, this is how so-and-so do it, because that's a breach of trust. The answer to that question in short is know what you actually want. And don't turn around to people and say, oh, I don't know, you decide.
I did. I have a rule of thumb, which is, always go in with a sort of 3 objectives that you want the site to come out with. And if you do have that level and degree of trust in the agency, then if you've got those 3 objectives, then the rest can sort of come from that. And you can, as long as the top level goals and objectives are met, the rest is just the team being able to build what they believe is actually going to be the best route in which to meet those objectives. So you can't really go wrong. But you're right in terms of having to know exactly what is going to be required in terms of to make that project go forward. Content, images, video, whatever that may be, is absolutely key as well. Ben, I'm gonna wrap you up, but before I do, I just want you to just tell everybody where they can find you on social media or anywhere else, and just tell everyone where they can find you.
Probably easiest place to find me is on Twitter, where I am Front End Ben, as in front end web development. Not that that's what I only do these days, but anyway, Front End Ben, all one word.
So thank you to Ben Furfie there for coming and joining me on the Digital Marketing Podcast to talk about WordPress. I hope you found it interesting. I know we had a very, very long conversation, but it's such a crucial part of certainly businesses who want websites, any kind of digital presence. WordPress is that mainstay sort of platform that people turn to. And I think the important point that we wanted to get across was, is it really necessary? Is WordPress that go-to platform that you have to go to? And I think we both came to the conclusion that it's not necessarily has to be that way, and it doesn't have to necessarily be WordPress. And, you know, certainly the web-based platforms have got a lot to say for themselves nowadays than perhaps they used to. But there isn't really something out there that allows anybody with a certain degree of knowledge in, you know, web development, not even web development, but just the internet and how to use tools and software and things like that, that allows them to just go on there, build their website and create a website and start adding content and their own things and flourishes to it. There isn't another software or platform out there, certainly not one that I've seen or come across. However, perhaps that is a conversation for another day. If you do know one, then I know how you can get in touch. You can email me at tom@digitalmarketingpunk.co.uk, or you can go on LinkedIn, find me, Thomas Marriott, and send me a message. If you do want to get in contact with me or the show, you can go and find me on Twitter, digital_punk, or you can go to Facebook at Digital Marketing Punk as well. And there are all the places in which you can find me. I hope you will join me next time around when I have another Josh, or second Josh, on the show. This time all the way from Canada. Josh Dakar is talking with me all about Shopify. Now, if you don't know what Shopify is an e-commerce platform, and it's a very popular e-commerce platform at the moment, but it's in a very drowned out sort of environment. There are a lot of other e-commerce platforms out there, which is very different to WordPress, I suppose, whereas, there's only that one surefire thing that everyone goes to, and that's WordPress. With e-commerce platforms, it's very, very different. You've got Magento, you've got PrestaShop, you've got OpenCart, you've got Shopify, or if you just want to sell stuff, you've got marketplaces like Etsy or just Amazon itself or eBay. So it's more of a saturated kind of environment. So really interesting conversation that I'll be having with Josh all about Shopify. So I hope you'll join me next time around. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you then.